Okay, in a major step towards normalising bilateral ties, India has resumed issuing tourist visas to Chinese citizens after a 5-year suspension. This move follows the G20 Galwan clash between Indian and Chinese troops, which led to the visa ban. The decision comes after a series of diplomatic efforts, including a January 2025 agreement between India and China to resume direct passenger flights. Moreover, in June of this year, India also revived the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, a pilgrimage that had been halted for 5 years, with the first group of Indian pilgrims crossing into Tibet. The visa resumption is seen as part of a larger trend of improving relations. We're now joined by Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, a former diplomat, joining us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for joining us here, Ambassador, here on NewsX World. We've seen this year a thawing of relations between Beijing and New Delhi. We've seen flights resume, direct flights between certain Indian cities and Chinese cities earlier this year. Now we're seeing this visa ban be lifted. How far do you see a warming of relations between the two world's largest populous countries developing?
Well, I think it's a step which has been taken currently, which needs to be sort of monitored and made sure that nothing goes wrong with this sort of opening up and further trying to improve our relations step by step. We have traditionally had good relations with China in the earlier era, before the communist takeover, for the last few thousands of years, because the Indian universities like Magad, like Patliputra, like Nalanda, like so many of these others, were very well known in China. And in China, the prevalent wisdom was that if any scholar had to become a true guru, a true teacher, he had to attend one of these Indian universities. And thereafter, he was accepted as a true guru in China or in other parts of the world. So, if we see the sources of Indian history or sources of Cambodian history, where I was ambassador, or sources of history of a lot of other countries in Southeast Asia and South Asia, these are the Chinese scholars like Yun Sang, Fa Hien, and other Dagwan, who studied in Indian universities and then went on to become great recognized authorities and scholars and experts. So that was a prevalent understanding for thousands of years in China. But however, in the last century, things started going downhill. And it is currently in a situation, the relations between India and China, where we have to tread very carefully because they cannot be trusted. They have gone back on their word. India sort of reintroduced China onto the world stage for the first time after the communists took over, because we had the Asian Relations Conference in New Delhi before our independence, where Tibet had been invited as an independent delegation. In 1955, India signed away the rights in Tibet for trade, for telecom, and for postal control over Tibet. Now, that was probably a big mistake which we made. Similarly, at the Second Asia Relations Conference, which was held in Indonesia and Bandung, China was completely ignored at that time by all. Chou En-lai was the representative there, who later became Prime Minister. He was not being given any stage time also, or any speaking time. So it was Nehru who, in an act of bravado or foolishness, took the hand of Chou En-lai, took him to the room of the chairman of the conference, which was the president of Indonesia, and asked him that Chou En-lai has to be given about half an hour to speak at the conference. So India also at the UN, when the US asked India to become a permanent member of the Security Council, India hesitated and said that China would be a better bet to make a member of the UN Security Council, permanent member. We are regretting all those decisions now, and we see what is happening in China Pakistan Economic Corridor, the arming, nuclear arming, the weaponization of Pakistan, the support to terror through Pakistan by China. And I, as ambassador and a diplomat for India, have seen their nefarious and malified actions in a large number of countries all over the world. So, as a system, it is very difficult for me to trust the Chinese authorities and the Chinese government. And I can only say that we have to tread very carefully. People to people relations may be good to revive through this measure, like the tourism restarting, the flights restarting, because at the people level, they may not have that same sort of debris or hubris of the last century, and it may be easier to overcome because Falun Gong, for example, followers
Yes.
who are persecuted in Tiananmen massacre are also basically people like yoga followers. So they, after a long time, they allowed some leaders of yoga from the US, actually, the Sikh, the white Sikhs as we call them, the American Sikhs. They were allowed into China to teach breathing, meditation, and some
Ambassador,
yoga.
apologies for interrupting. I'm basically wondering why now is this happen? Is this thaw happening? Has it got anything to do with the tensions? Of course, the trade tensions with the United States, the protectionism that the Trump administration has put forward in his new term.
So, as a matter of real politics, it is a good step. You're right. It's in the reflection and the prism of the steps which US has taken to declare G2, for example, US and China as the global powers. So, from all those perspectives, I think it is a good step for India to maintain some modicum of relationship with China and the Chinese people and the Chinese authorities, so that the US is also not taking India for granted. Because for India to have some working relationship with China is important. So I think it's a good step, as I said right in the beginning, that it is a good step which is being taken, but it has to be managed very professionally, very firmly, with a lot of controls for all the other things that they have been doing separately against Indian interests. And they keep on doing against Indian interests, even at the UN and other agencies, even now. So we have to go ahead telling them very firmly that we are taking these steps in the hope that, it's a very difficult statement to make, saying hope, because it's not very easy to expect anything from the Chinese. But we have to keep on stating it firmly that we hope that they will not create tensions in the border, they will not create further problems in international bodies, etc. So all those statements have to be kept on reiterated in all our meetings, so that we are able to continue in a forward-looking manner with them.
Yes, Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to have you on the programme, and thank you for taking the time. We now stay in South